All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Pursuit of Ownership. It is Payton here, and I'm here with Tyler. Tyler, how are you doing on this fine evening?
Peyton, I'm doing extremely well. Both of us are coming off the most recent share practices quarterly meeting. And I think there's always sort of somewhat of a buzz coming off of that. And also, as Matt Garino posed it, a postpartum depression that results because you get there with all your friends and all their fiancés as well, who are also our friends. I shouldn't say fiancés, significant others as well. And they're all friends together and we're all friends together. And you come back and you're back in your own world, and you just sort of realize that divide between the two. And then you're trying to sort of zone back into your daily grind, and you're noticing the discrepancies between how fun and amazing that is, and then sort of, what ordinary life is like. And so I'm just kind of readjusting to that a little bit. But it was an excellent meeting. It was another traction style meeting. And those are getting more efficient every time we do them. So those take up a small part of an afternoon, and the rest is just, good old quality time, catching up with each other. And it's great. So I'm back at dental school, finishing up my very last week. I had my second to last appointment today. Had a little bit of a crisis. It wouldn't have been a normal day in dental school if it weren't for that. And
Exactly.
then tomorrow I will hopefully be seeing my last dental school patient. A lot of feels going on today. So how about you, man? Yeah,
Sure, everything's good. I feel like all inquiring minds are wondering what is going to be your last procedure that you do in dental school.
I am dropping in hopefully an FPD. It is
Okay.
28 through 30. It's a restoration I should have never agreed to do because it was kind of late in the game, and didn't really have a whole lot of margin of error, pun intended. And fortunately, it's worked out. And this is technically today was the last day of official clinic. I'm actually spilling over to optional clinic, which I'm a little bit disappointed in. I was hoping to be out on the official last day. I know.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, it was kind of a scheduling conflict. Truthfully, I could have made it work, but things were just a little bit crazy. So tomorrow afternoon, provided everything drops in real nicely, I'll be checking out and just kind of going around the school, getting signatures for different things, and make my way on out of there. And hopefully I can get to a point where anything else that needs to get done can be done remotely, because I don't plan on sticking around. So it's wild. I actually finished my last competency today.
Congrats.
The patient for the competency was going to come in tomorrow morning, and I was really counting on it. I checked it. He confirmed the appointment and everything. And then I got an email from my school saying that he canceled. He'd apparently lost my number. He'd been trying to cancel it for days, and he eventually called the school to cancel it, and really need this guy to come in. Turns out he unfortunately had a relative that had been admitted to the hospital for something, and there was just no real knowledge of when he'd be able to come in. He's in another state already. There's just no way around it. And fortunately, I was able to work with it, and we found a solution. So got the competency done, and that's off to the bank. So it was really nice turning that in. And now I just got to keep my fingers crossed for this last appointment and hope that it goes better than the average dental school appointment.
Yeah, doesn't take much. Really doesn't.
It really doesn't. I've been very fortunate to never have a crown seat go poorly. I've just never had margins not meet and be nice and flush, or be way out of occlusion and have to add porcelain or something like that. I've never had that happen, which actually concerns me, because the first time would be on the very last day that I plan to be in clinic. Hopefully we won't be hearing about that in future interviews.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, we will definitely be keeping our fingers crossed for you.
Appreciate it.
But yeah, as far as on my end, everything's good. Coming towards the tail end of my D3 year, our school actually recently just announced that they're going back to 100% capacity, which is awesome.
Wow.
It's it's good and bad. That just means longer wait time for faculty, but at the same time, I still feel like overall it means more appointments, which I'll take any day of the week. Other than that, just a few more weeks until finals are coming up. D3 is kind of the last bad set of finals, at least at my school. I don't know if you had a similar experience.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. Then there's just, boards, and then licensing next year, and hopefully a lot of clinic experience. So we'll see.
Oh man. Yeah. I, being on the other end of what you are now, at the at the precipice of. It is just crazy to think about all the things that I've had to get through in the last year, albeit as unconventional as it's been. Yeah, that's a lot of hurdles, and it does get a lot different after that last round of finals, and especially after like MBDE part 2, because that's when the didactic stuff like really slopes off, and it's more about just getting your work done. And personally, I kind of preferred that. I thought didactics more often than not were just sort of detracting from the real work. So I enjoyed that transition, but I had quite a bout with licensing exams, as you well know. So, I got some stories behind that.
Yeah, we can go into it, but we don't have to. It's just a whole. It's a whole lot.
I mean, we can. Don't let me spend more than 5 or 6 minutes on it.
5 or 6. I'm cutting you down to 3 or 4 max.
Yeah, no, I can't do the stories justice then. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Well, I guess we have set a very firm base as far as starting this episode goes. I feel like we need to get into the meat of the episode or maybe the veggies. Tyler's a vegetarian, so I don't want to be forcing that upon him.
I appreciate your discretion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm here to help. But yeah, it's been a while since Tyler and I have done sort of a more informal episode. So what we're actually going to do here is we're just going to I create a list of questions and I'm going to ask Tyler, and then I'll also respond to them. Initially, I was going to let Tyler see the document before we started, but I just kind of felt like that would take away from it. Like I kind of wanted to get some just raw answers. I didn't want to give him a lot of time to think about it. So we might have some long pauses here. We might have some filler words, but I think it's going to be good. I feel like the audience is going to enjoy it. And I don't know how Tyler feels about it, but I honestly feel fantastic about it.
Yeah, I think you guys are going to hear me being a little extra pensive this time around. I usually get some time to prime myself up for stuff, so that'll be cool. But before we get into it, I just want to give a shout out to our editor, Gary, and our podcast MC extraordinaire, John, for putting up with us. We got a little bit behind schedule, and this is kind of a last minute, feat of improvisation here. I think this was us doing this is kind of long overdue. I really enjoy when we have these interviews, but we had a few things fall through, and I think both of us have just been super busy, and we kind of got behind on the schedule. So I just want to say thanks to those guys because they're going to be putting on a pretty quick turnaround to get this out on Wednesday. So I just want to say I really appreciate them. But yeah, Payton, you have the floor.
Awesome. Yeah, they're the best. We definitely couldn't do it without them, so we really do appreciate it. All right. So first off, I feel like we just kind of start nice and easy. What has been the hardest part of dental school for you?
Yeah. So I think that my answer to that, yeah, I got two things. One, I would say, would be failure. And then the other one I would say would be angst. I say both of them first, so I don't forget one of them as I'm explaining the first. So failure for me was something I had experienced it prior to dental school, but I had never really allowed myself to eat it. There was always, some reason why I had failed the thing, and it was never truly my fault. I always, found a way around it, and found a way to explain failure away. I never really let myself own it, and just had a very cautious relationship with it. Most of the things that I did were in avoidance of failure. And my very first practical D1 year, it was a waxing practical. I distinctly remember. Yeah, I distinctly, and waxing is taken pretty seriously at my school. I know in some places it's sort of like a take-home thing. At ours, it's actually something that you can be held back over if you're not really quite up to snuff. They feel that you need to stay behind another year and get your skills up, and that's going to make a real difference down the road for your viability as a clinician. I hope people can interpret from my tone that I'm not
very absurd
really in agreement with that, but be that as it may, I don't want to get too political prior to graduation. So so it's taken pretty seriously, and I was feeling pretty confident in myself because in most of the things that I had taken on in my life, I had managed to be better than average at pretty quickly. and I just didn't really have any concern for my ability to do well. I'd worked in a lab for a while. Granted, I wasn't actually using my hands a whole lot. I was a digital guy, but I felt like I was a little bit ahead of the curve there. So I remember being in the practice lab, and I kind of took this sort of cocky role where I was sort of hopping from station to station, watching people practice. Like, oh yeah, that looks good, but I would change this or I would change that, and I'd be like, oh no, that's good, that'll pass. Like that's good. That looks like a tooth. And like I was kind of like trying to take up some leadership there and like help people out and get to know people that way. And I was just really confident in myself. And we go into this practical. I'm waxing up number 8. It's we were using green wax that day. At my school, we either use green or blue wax. They don't tell you until the day of.
I was gonna say you guys had different colors. That's a new thing. I haven't heard that.
It's another kinky dental school thing they like to do. I actually like to mix my colors, but
it sounds like brown to me.
Well, yeah, blue and green, but you can get like the red and there. I found some red sticks and some blue sticks, and they purple wax, and people were really liking my purple teeth. It kind of made them forget how poorly contoured they were. So anyway, yeah, I do. Oh my god. So I do. I waxed this number 8, and you have to wait several days for those to be graded, and then they don't really tell you when the grades are coming back. They wait until the end of a sim lab session. And then there's this one person who has to be a sadist to hold this job, walks around row by row, always comes to my row last, and hands out the practical papers, the grading papers, the rubrics, and they sort of, fold them and turn them over and hand them to you. And they just kind of go person by person, handing those off. And I was like, not really effaced by this at all. I'm just waiting on it. I see other people stressing. I'm like, yeah, that's whatever. That's for them, not me. And comes around to my row. And at this time, my friend, my classmate, Brad, was sitting to my left, and she comes over and she hands him a sheet of paper, and I see him looking kind of dejected, like he's not happy with what he's got. And I'm like, oh, that's tough, Brad. We're gonna have to talk about that, right? And so then she gives me a paper, and I see I think it was like an 88 on there, and that's actually an A in occlusion, and I was like, nice, like solid 88. It's my first try. I didn't try that hard. This is not a bad start. I'll get a few more. I'll get myself more into the A arena later on. Like, this is not a bad first start, right? And she kind of walks past me, and she kind of looks puzzled for a second. And just as I'm about to console Brad, she says, "Hey, she points at me, and she says, you're Brad, right?" And I'm like, no, I am not. I am not Brad. I am Tyler. And she says, "Oh, okay." And she like takes my paper. She takes the paper she handed Brad, and she does a little swoop and swap. And so I get the one that Brad was handed, and and she just kind of looks at me for a second and just like mouths sorry. She can't even voice it. And I look down at the paper, and it is I think a 67 is what it was, which
That's
was
more
like,
than half. That's more than half.
I think 60. No, I think the bottom, they don't bottom out at 0 because then you'll never pass the class. They actually bottom out at like 65.
Oh.
So this thing, I basically waxed up a thumb. I mean, this was like not good. And I'm looking at this grade, I'm looking at my tooth, and I just can't even see what's wrong with it. Like, I have no idea. And I think there's some mistake. I'm going around, I'm talking to people. I'm like, come on, like this isn't a 67, right? And I'm looking at other people's teeth. And I'm like, oh, that actually looks a little bit better. This looks a little bit better. And I look at mine. I'm like, oh man, I actually bombed this thing. Oh, no. And I did not have a good spirit about it at all. Like, I can laugh about it now. But at the time, I just like, I just packed up my tackle box, and I had a propane torch or butane torch, and just walked right out of the school, straight to the parking lot, went home, and just started waxing. Or no, I didn't immediately start waxing. I like laid on a couch and turned off all the lights and just kind of like marinated there for like probably a few hours and just kind of let that sink in. And then I started waxing at home and like did that and still did poorly. And yeah, that's a whole nother talk about feedback and stuff, getting help from other people. But yeah, that was like my first brush with like not getting what I'd hoped in dental school. And little did I know that was going to happen like 100 more times in dental school. And there was certainly like a change in terms of my expectations of like what I would get in terms of grades in middle school. But like that was the first time I really had to be set in with like failure. And I actually, in response to that, I started keeping like a fail blog, and I would journal like all the ways in which I failed or came up short of expectations like every single day. And I do that for a while until I got a little bit more desensitized with it. And it was a lot of different. I know I'm rambling a lot, but it was a lot of different interactions with people about having failed practicals and having to remediate them, and sort of what the result of that was and how they felt about it. And I had a lot of really big mindset shifts around what failure was, what it meant about success long term. And I think those changes really that was probably the biggest challenge in dental school, but it was also the most rewarding thing to go through, because it has prepared me so much more for like what the real world is like, where you can't just like ace a multiple choice test and be a success. So I ended up being super, super thankful for that experience. And eventually like my hands were good, and I figured out good methods for practicing and getting feedback from people, and being more humble about asking for help, and realizing that I wasn't so good at everything like I like to pretend that I was. So the second one,
wait, Tyler, I actually have a quick question for you. So
yeah, sure, of course.
I know you joined with shared practices pretty early in your dental school journey. What point did you join shared practices?
The email that George alludes to all the time was sent in August. So I think I got like August the first year. Like August was like the month we started. And then I think I was having conversations with George like late August, early October, and started kind of getting onboarded and working on evaluations with him. So pretty much like from the beginning of dental school, it was like the whole journey. Yeah, so that's it was pretty much from the start, and that's really where a lot of that perspective around failure kind of came from, and that was a huge influence for me. And George was definitely a really big, like I mean now there's so many people involved in our operation at this point that's kind of funny to think about how it used to be, but like at that point in time, George was like still in dental school. I had just started. It was just him, Richard, and me, and like I didn't really talk to Richard that much at the time, and so George was like really like my central like mentor, and he helped me a lot around the concept of failure and how to work with that. So that was like really huge for me at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was gonna say too, if you don't mind me touching on the like failure thing, and then we can get to you talking about the angst as well, as far as
get there.
Yeah. I was gonna say the fresh can pop there.
I'm not just tab popping.
But yeah, I feel like the failure thing, like you were talking about, is huge for a lot of high achieving dental students, because for a lot of those people, this is their first time really interacting or coming in contact with something like that. Like a lot of people that are in this position, may have been pretty good at school, really didn't have a whole lot of issues, with high school or undergrad. And with dentistry, with hand skills, with working with human beings, like there's just so many different variables that there without a doubt is going to be something that trips you up, that's difficult. And yeah, and like you said towards the end of what you were kind of your explanation, just your mindset and how you can move forward from those failures is super, super important. So I kind of encountered a lot of the same. I feel like especially when it came to hand skills, like I noticed it with waxing at first. Like the guy next to me was probably the next like Van Gogh. Like his wax ups were absolutely impeccable, and I look over at mine, it's just a blob. I'm like, how is this even possible? Like I'm normally really good at things, and I'm sucking here. Right. But you just gotta realize everyone learns at a different pace, and as long as you're learning from your mistakes and moving forward as best you can, then that's the best you can do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and you mentioned, what it's like coming into dental school, being someone that's never failed before. And, they talk about, when you go to dental school, like you've experienced being in this really high percentile, like your entire life. And you just sort of operate with this assumption that however the average person's doing, you're doing significantly better than that. So you just kind of listen to the average and then make it sound a lot better for yourself. And you're like, that's probably where I'm at. But when you go to dental school, everyone kind of comes from that, and there's a whole new distribution curve. And you might find yourself on the left side of that curve for the first time in your life. And it was in that moment that I felt that I was like several sigma on the left of this curve. Like I'm like near the bottom, like very likely being separated, wheat from the chaff type thing. I realized that, maybe I was one of those that was going to be towing the line of like getting held back. And so I actually operated for probably the first 2 years of dental school, like having a very real fear of failing dental school, and having to repeat a year, which I was like mortified about, truly mortified. And there was a lot of fear-based motivation behind me getting myself ready, which I do not operate that way anymore. But at the time it was useful. But I turned it around. Like I really started approaching things differently. And one thing that I learned was that, people come into dental school, and I don't know, like if your classmate you're talking about, if they, had like experience waxing, or if it was just like naturally easy for them.
They did post back, so they had experience waxing, which I didn't know.
Right. So like, yeah, so that can happen. There's also some people that like literally don't have any context for this. Or maybe they have something analogous to it, but they just happen to find it very, very easy, right? Like they just have a better artistic eye, better discriminating eye. And like one thing I learned is that people, they come into these sorts of skills, at different levels, right? But like long term, what really results in who actually gets to be the best of the best is really who works the most at it and who does it most efficiently, and who's very strategic about how they work. Like you can have talent, but like true skill and expertise comes with work, and you can compensate for wherever you are coming in at, off the starting point. And I was definitely behind there, but by the end of it, I actually ended up being pretty decent. Not so much at waxing, like I was passable at waxing, but things like fixed, like that is a really, really scary course, like even scarier course in occlusion at my school. Like they're really, really tight on fixed pros. And I went in there a month before the class even started and cut a prep once every day for 30 days. And I like had this whole like cataloging thing where like I would cut a prep, I would like cut a number into it to like catalog it, and I'd get feedback from it, know what was good, what was bad. And then I had this whole like catalog of like different preps, and knew what was good and bad from each one, and like had a really good vision for it. And then fixed was like a breeze. And all of a sudden, like I'm one of the ones that are really good at it. And little do people know, I'm actually like kind of terrible with my hands naturally, but it was like a method that I approached it with. And I found out that, it doesn't really matter what I'm coming into it with talent wise and what I already have coming into it. It matters like how I approach it and how I try my best to achieve excellence. And that's a process that I think can be applied to a lot of things. And when I found that sort of power, and I was able to emerge from, being really bottom of the barrel and terrible to being, one of the better ones at a thing, I that was actually really empowering for me. So that was kind of how I emerged from that failure.
Perfect. Yeah, that's fantastic. And yeah, I think that's definitely something that a lot of people can learn from. I know we're still on the first question here.
Yeah, we're doing.
You were also talking about angst. How has that been another hardest part of dental school for you?
Yeah, I mean, that one's a lot briefer. Like I don't have as many anecdotes behind that. And I think a lot of it I've already kind of voiced in the podcast here. I think, one thing I said back in November, October, was that like I had never felt so far from graduation, just because I was so beat down by COVID and not knowing when I was really going to be up to or being allowed to like treat my patients regularly and get experience. And so I think, the more you learn, it's really a double-edged sword, because you become better prepared for when you hit the ground running. But it just seems like it's taking forever for you to hit the ground running, and you're like, I know these things, I could do these things. And if I were just graduated already, if I just had a license, I would just be doing it and I'd be killing it. I'd be making all this money, or I'd be, throwing it at Bitcoin or Safe Moon or whatever's going on. And like, you get all this angst because you're like surrounded by people who are a little ahead of you, and you're talking with them on a daily basis and holding conversations with them, and they treat you like colleagues. They treat you with respect. Yet, you live in an entirely different strata than they do, and it's just hard.
Socioeconomic class.
Yeah, and it's not just about money. It's also just about the freedom and the ability to just practice dentistry with relative autonomy and to be able to do it frequently. For me, it was really, really hard for 5 months of COVID to just sit there and work on mannequins and watch Instagram videos and just imagine doing dentistry while I'm on a podcast talking about doing dentistry. That was really, really angsty for me. And, I feel a lot of empathy for people that are, really young listeners of Share Praxis D1, D2, that have learned so much from the show, just as we have. And yet, they've learned it earlier than we did. And, they're so angsty now because they're like, oh my gosh, like, I just can't wait till I have a dental license. I can do something with it. So yeah, I think angst was really, really hard for me. It caused me to disengage from a lot of things with school that I didn't believe were relevant. I got really frustrated with things that I knew would not be very beneficial to me. And the clearer my vision became for what I wanted to do after school, the clearer it was where the inefficiencies in my life were. And I didn't really have any decision about whether or not those inefficiencies had to happen. They were just processes that I had to undergo, rules that I had to follow, things that had to be done in school, obligations that I had. And that only got harder as I learned more. So now it's funny because like this is like my last week and it's like really going to be over soon. And I'm starting to get kind of nostalgic about it. And so it's bittersweet and it's like really hard to believe that it's actually here. But I spent a lot of time and energy just being really frustrated with it. So that took some next level patience for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't echo enough what you said about the younger listeners of Shared Practices, the D1s, the D2s.
Yeah.
You just have all of this knowledge and you just want to do something with it. But when it comes down to it, there's only so much you can do without a license. You can, I mean, it hurts me to say that, but it's kind of true.
Yeah.
For
most.
Yeah.
We've had people in our circles that would tend to disagree with that, but I think that's for the most part true.
Yeah. And I feel like for those people that are making the crazy moves, it's not the knowledge, it's just the boldness and the willingness just to do whatever it takes to make something happen. But yeah, it's a fantastic place to be in, but it's also a very challenging place to be in. So couldn't agree with you more there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it can just be, yeah, I mean, you put it well. I mean, it can just be very isolating when you spend so much of like your mental space thinking about what's happening after dental school, but you just keep reminding that you're still very much in dental school and there's still a lot ahead of you. It was really hard, like third year, knowing how many board exams I had ahead of me. And little did I know I was going to be like double that amount of exams because of different circumstances. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot, but then once it's out of the way, you're like, oh, like this is really it. Like today I got, this is an aside, but I got an award today that I was not expecting at all. And I won't go too much into the award because it's going to sound like I'm bragging. But
was it Best Hair Award?
Yeah, you got it. It was the highlights. I was neck and neck with another classmate, and then I retouched my tips, and
they had no choice. They had to give it to you.
They had none. That was really the deal breaker there. So, but yeah,
your actual award. Sorry.
Yeah. So it's not the award itself. It's the gift that came along with it. They gave me a wine glass. Well, it's not actually a wine glass. It's just a glass, I think. But it says Tyler Tolbert DMD on it. And like just seeing that is just really surreal and reminds me that like I'm actually at the finish line here. And I can start letting go of some of this angst. And like now it's time to actually hit the road and see if the proof's in the pudding. So yeah, that's a difficult thing for me to put in words. I'm sure most people go through it. But to finally get some capitulation of all that angst is, you start to believe it'll never actually come. So it's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm super happy for you. I feel like you're as close to the first person to kind of go through the whole entire school process through shared practices as it gets. Cause I think Richard obviously had already graduated. George joined during his D3 year.
Yeah.
So you're kind of the first one. I mean, obviously there's people that have been interested in ownership their whole time in dental school, but you're kind of the first one that's been all the way through the SP umbrella your whole time in school. So
wow.
Hats off to you for
that is a really interesting observation. I had not actually realized that before. I'm like the first like full class of like SP baby. Yeah. Awesome. Wow. I had not noticed that. Thank you for reflecting that. Wow.
Absolutely. Cool. Yeah, I actually just realized that. So I was like, oh, that was a nice observation. But yeah, I'm super happy for you. And just to tease a little bit, we're actually gonna be having a new co-host here shortly. We're not gonna say who it is, but I know we're really sad to see Tyler go. He's been nothing short of amazing. But you're on to bigger and better things, right?
Jeez, man, you're killing me. Like that was question one, and then now you're doing this.
Well, I'm gonna lighten it up. I have backups here, so
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, no, on that subject. Yeah, I think that one thing we've discovered is that TPO is a pre-ownership show. It's a pre-dentist show for dentists, and it's only right that the torch be passed. Like as I move on, and I've been kind of grooming you for this for some time, and you've taken to it much better than I did originally, and really grown into your own. So I have no doubt that you're gonna carry the torch well. And yeah, there will be a new voice coming on soon, and we'll kind of see how that pans out. And yeah, I think this is going to be kind of a recurring baton pass for the foreseeable future as far as TPO is concerned. So it's really cool to be doing that. It's been an absolute honor, to be on the show and to be able to do this. And literally every time someone talks to me about how the show has impacted them, or finds out that I'm like the host of the show they've been listening to for a long time. Like this happens every now and then. It's always a really special feeling just to know that I'm impacting people in the same way that the show impacted me when I was a D1. So it's just, full circle. It's about as full circle as it gets. So yeah, wow, man. Didn't know we were going that direction, Payton. Seriously.
Yeah. Jeez. And you kind of you're the one that started it, and there's one thing that I will definitely always keep with me is that there will never be another host, and I feel like I can say this with a lot of confidence, that will have the vast word choice that you do. I'm fully confident in that.
Not true.
Hey,
Not true.
We'll see, but I'm pretty confident.
There will be challengers.
All right. So, I feel like that was a nice beefy question. I feel like we got to lighten it up with something that's a little more surface level. Mm-hmm. So once you graduate, are you going to go business casual, or are you going to go scrubs? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so something that I have to really credit you with literally changing my life on. This is yeah.
I'm not aware of this.
The big switch has happened. So right after, yeah, you do.
I got it.
I know you do. So right after I passed my boards, I was in Nashville, Tennessee. And I finally I had to figure out a reward for myself, or a consolation prize if I had failed, God forbid. But I decided it was going to be a fresh pair of Lululemon pants, and this is something that Payton has been trying to get me on for a long time. He used to work at Lululemon. He worked retail. Little known fact. He used to get Lululemons on the low.
And, it wasn't on the low. I advertised it very hard.
What?
Wait, when you say on the low, what do you mean?
I mean like discount Lululemons.
Oh, then yes.
Oh,
absolutely.
no,
not. I thought you meant like on the down low. I was like, no, it was very
down low.
On the okay. Sorry,
not Lululemons, not low key Lululemons on the down low. No, okay. I'm talking about Lululemons on the low.
I'm very sorry. Continue your story.
Heavily discounted store employee discounts.
Yes.
So you've been wearing these literally every time I see you, in literally any context, in any climate, for any function, and I really needed to see what all the fuss was about. And so I bought myself a couple pairs of Lululemons, and so I think that's probably going to be my primary attire. I do like scrubs. I like monogram scrubs with my name and my degree on them, and that's cool. I like brands, but these Lululemon pants are more comfortable than any scrub I've ever worn in my life. Any pant I've ever worn, short. They're more comfortable than my own skin. I'm more comfortable than the day I was born in these. So that's going to be my attire in, out of the office. I'm going to have surgical Lulus. I'm going to have casual, business casual, and formal Lulus, which are actually all the same pant. And so I'm really, really excited about that. And Lululemon is actually an official sponsor of the Pursuit of Ownership. I should have probably said that in the beginning.
Yeah. And I actually, so first off, that's fantastic. I'm really holding back. I told you so, but I'm not going to say it. I brought it up, but I'm not going to say it.
It's all yours. I have no pride here.
If anyone listening is on the fence about it, I highly encourage you try it. It is a big investment, but like they last forever, super comfortable. And like Tyler was saying, any occasion that you could need them for, right, they're there. Like it's just, they're super, super solid. I had a thought, but I just got so distracted by Lululemon that it's just kind of gone now.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else on that topic?
It was a good ad. No, that's about it. I don't know if there's any I don't know if Lululemon has really good top wear, like above the waist. I don't know. I really just know
they have
what
polos.
Yeah, so I'll probably wear Lululemon heads, shoulders, knees, and toes, maybe for the rest of my life, at least until I find something else. But yeah, that's changed pants forever. Like I had my favorite pair of Levi's for about 2 years, and I'm about to toss them because because these Lulus are just next level. I just can't speak enough for them. And I mean, we spent a lot of time on that. So
fantastic. Great. All right. Next question that we have here. This is another kind of casual one, but I like it. Okay. So, what is the worst dental office name that you've ever seen?
Oh man.
And you can't just say dentist because there's a lot of those out there, and it's unoriginal, but it's not bad. It's just
well, that any practice called dentist gets number one, but we'll make this a competition for a second. Well, I don't want to call anyone's practice out that might actually listen to the show. I mean, I don't know how. Actually, if they had this name, they don't listen to the show. Period. I think probably. I think I really didn't like Access Dental. I think we saw that very recently.
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah,
and it bothered me so much. Access Dental.
Like, I don't feel like anyone's gonna look at that name and be like, "Yeah, I'm going there." Like, that's the spot.
Yeah, no, like Access. Like, you really want people thinking about like the access of whatever, anything. Like, imagine if that were like a gastroenterology office or something. They call it like Access Gastroenterology.
That's terrible.
Like, like it's just not what you want. It's not the visual you want to invite people to. So if you're out there, owner of Access Dental, I need you to reconsider. I mean, props to you for keeping that name in my head. There were a lot of dental practices in Austin, Texas that I saw, and yours is the one that I remember. So maybe you've won in a way. But in the same way, you've lost every time someone's invited that visual imagery into their head. So that's the one that comes to mind. I'll probably think of something else. I think there's other ones with like people that just have terrible names for dentists, like their last name is Payne or Slaughter or something like that, and then they put that on the line.
Wow, yeah. I've not heard that. I've heard Payne. One of my buddies, actually, his last name is Payne, and he's a dentist. Shout out to Riley, but
and there was another one we saw on Facebook. I'm not going to say it because it's like literally the person's name, so that's just a little bit too specific. But like, he did not have a name that should have been put in front of the word dental. It just sounded funny.
I
can't talk about it.
Yeah. I saw one. I can't remember where I saw it, but it was a fancy dental, but it was spelled FANCE with like the little accent thing on the E
with the line.
Yeah, like
that's chic. That's really chic.
And the font was just like a nice little cursive. Like I was like, I can't even read this, but when I can read it, I'm disappointed.
Yeah,
it's like they failed on both fronts.
It's like a hip hair salon or something. It's weird.
Yeah, no, it's not good. Okay, next question. Do you plan on playing music at your office or the office that you're working at?
Man, you were right about surface level.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, dude. We keep it light. I started heavy and then we end on a high note.
Fair enough. So another thing that you and also Olivia have turned me on to is Big Booty Mix. I think I'm a big fan. Big fan of Big Booty Mix 7. I'm not quite sure that it captured the brilliance of Big Booty Mix 6, though I do prefer the Big Booty Mix 8. So I would say that the Big Booty Mixes have really peaked at 7. And so I highly recommend those. There's accompanying music videos that are pretty raunchy, so be aware they're not exactly family friendly. But for the audio specifically, I would highly recommend Big Booty Mixes, depending on the context that you're operating within. That said, you're talking about music in the office. I just really needed to mention Big Booty Mixes. I don't think I'll be playing Big Booty Mix in the office.
I was going to say, dude, that's a bold play.
Yeah, I kind of went off on a tangent with that question. So as far as the music that gets played in the office, I'm a huge Frank Sinatra guy. That was actually like one of my Spotify number ones. And when I say huge, I mean like this is the guy that gets played when I'm in my operatory. Nice. And not quite so much on my own, probably because I listen to him so much in the operatory. He's just so universal, and it's calming for people. I listen to a lot of like jazz and stuff too, but I couldn't tell you any of the artists behind that. A lot of this is like Spotify random radio stuff, so I don't actually know who I listen to anymore. but yeah, I mean, that's pretty good. I do enjoy like 70s, 80s classics too, as well. So yeah, there's definitely going to be music for sure. I mean, dental sounds are among the worst sounds ever conceived. I mean, it's just literal tinnitus.
Yeah,
But
the
just
drill,
outside of your ear.
suction.
Yeah, no, it's awful, and it'd be better if everything were just silent. So I mean, you got to drown it out somehow. So yeah, no, there will definitely be music, and in fact, it's not just going to be music over the PAs. Like it's going to be headphones on patients. Like I don't want them hearing the things going on. So
I always wonder with that dynamic, like how do you communicate with the patient, like open, close, or turn left, turn right? You just kind of motion it. How does that work?
you can lift an ear, lift one of the.
I guess that's true.
Yeah, it's an over the ear thing. Yeah, you can do
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
It's usually not that loud. They can usually.
Yeah. I feel like I'm gonna have a strong internal battle with this once I graduate and I'm in an office. Because I really like EDM and rap, and I feel like those are just really non-universal type of musics.
It's a little polarizing, but I mean,
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, and it's
yeah,
like I just don't know if it's gonna fly. I'd love to, but
yeah.
do I want patients to be scared? Do
Just
I
depends
want
on who your market is, man.
yeah?
You
Do I
know,
want
like
any parents to be concerned about their kids hearing these things?
yeah, no,
I
like
probably
if
should be concerned about that. So
yeah, I mean, if your dental practice is like the Electric Sun dental practice or like Lollapalooza, something like yeah, then it kind of makes sense, and you attract that market. So I mean, that's just niching yourself out. I wouldn't I wouldn't knock it.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah, let's see what else do we have here. Um, and I went pretty surface level with a lot of these.
Yeah, it sounded like you had a couple burners, but not that impressed by
I,
that.
I think so. I feel like we kind of already covered this, but what did you think your future was going to hold with your first day of dental school? And then obviously, we kind of know where you're at now, but how does it contrast to the beginning? Because I feel like almost everyone, their first day of school is so much different than before they graduate.
Yeah, so I had this is a great question, by the way. And
See, I have good ones. I just kind
I
of buried them.
spent a lot of time on some not so good ones, but anyway, so sorry, I'm picking up from Matt. I'm just trying.
Yeah, just roast me out here.
Yeah, I hate it. I'll shake it, but yeah, no, I had the fortune before I even started dental school of finding out about all the dental related media out there, and talked about it several times. I went to Breakaway, the Advanced Startup Seminar the summer before dental school. I was listening to shared practices, and like I think we talked about this a little bit over the weekend. When I went into dental school, I was pretty fresh on the idea that I could actually like be a dentist and be happy with it. Throughout almost all of undergrad, I dreaded it. The first 2 years, I had not made a decision at all. I had originally gone there, and I remember I was at open house, and I wanted to go to the business orientation, and I went there and went through that and was excited about it. And then my dad like sat me down. He was like, "Look, I just hired a business major, in like with like an undergraduate degree. I just hired him to like, come in after hours and sweep up the shop. Like these guys are down and dozen. Like I'm not saying he was like, I'm not sending you to school to get a business degree. So I was like, okay, interesting. So I was like, all right, so I'll do something. I was like, I'll do something STEM. I mean, after all, it ended up being okay advice. So I ended up doing something STEM. I knew I liked biology, so I went with that. I hadn't really known that like dentistry was going to be a thing. It had been talked about because, I think a lot of people get into dentistry because their parents pay like $5,000 cash for braces, and they're like, you should really look into this. And that was kind of something that was in the back of my head. But I didn't really want to do it because my parents were suggesting that I did it, and I wanted to do something different. And I went through like 2 years of undergrad, like not really having a focus. I was just taking the prereqs and trying to get good at that and just have a really good time. I had this sort of like fateful, well, like there's like the dental school story, and then like the story you tell, like, when you're trying to get in dental school, like the interview story, right?
I feel like I've heard that story so many times.
Yeah. So we don't have to do that, but yeah. So like one way or another, I eventually landed on dentistry. I was like, okay, I'll do that. And it was really through a lot of, self-help and development books that I kind of arrived at the conclusion that it didn't really matter what I did, but rather that whatever I did had a high ceiling, and that I could be passionate about it, and I could just find passion in it. And so long as I could figure out something that gave me energy, figure out something about it that gave me passion, I could just follow it in the road, and I would find purpose in that. Like I didn't have to just wait for something to just be this like beacon of like, hey, you need to do this with your life, because that really wasn't working out for me. And so I finally settled on dentistry. And it really wasn't until right before dental school that I was like learning about what was possible out there. I found like the Not Your Average Startup thread that Scott Luna had started, which George was a part of, and he was like commenting on it. And I was like, yeah, this guy kind of seems like a know-it-all. And and that's kind of when it occurred to me that like you could own a business, and you could be an entrepreneur, and you can make dentistry whatever you want it to be, and sort of design the life you wanted to, and reverse engineer it through dentistry to make it possible. And that's when I, really started to embrace that. So really from the get-go, I knew that that is what I wanted to manifest, was the entrepreneurialism of dentistry. And I really focused on that before dental school, because I said to myself, well, dental school is going to teach me how to be a dentist. I don't need to research that, which I don't agree with that anymore, but that was the mentality. And if I just take care of the entrepreneurialism on my own and allow dental school to do that sort of on cruise control, by the end of it, I'll be like a really well-balanced dentist, and I'll be prepared to own a practice right out. And I was inspired to be a part of like the affiliate program and Breakaway and all these other things. And so I think in the very beginning of dental school, I just had this idea that I was going to own a practice right out of school. Maybe it was going to be a startup, maybe it was going to be an acquisition, but I just knew I needed to own right out. I was never going to be an associate. I was never going to work for anybody else, because I didn't really like doing that. How that's actually panned out has been a pretty big series of like twists and turns and in different plans. And I kind of got to a point where I just settled on one story of what I was doing after school, and stopped updating people. So now my role looks a little different than I ever would have imagined. And the kind of dentistry I'll be doing is different than I ever imagined. So there's definitely been a lot of transformation there, but I think what has stayed the same throughout is intentionality and passion. I figured out what I liked about dentistry, and I've like really zoned in on that. And I've tried to make something of a career path out of that. And so I think the principles were mostly the same, but the actual vision itself has really changed. But I still think it's super important for people, D1s, D2s, that really haven't had a whole lot of clinical experience, to still try their best to like find some sort of direction, and then allow themselves to alter it over time. Because really it's about that practice of being intentional about what you want to do that culminates in what you actually end up doing. And I think that's a process that you never actually stop doing. And the sooner you start doing it, the better, because there's a lot of twists and turns, and it's just inefficient to wait for it, because things don't just fall together, But yeah, I guess that's kind of a roundabout answer to it.
No, I thought that was really good, because for so many people, I feel like you get into school, you're like, okay, I'm going to be a dentist. I'm going to do teeth things. I'm going to, take the normal path. And then you get introduced to some ideas, whether it be through podcasts, Dental Town, whatever it might be. And it really opens your eyes to what's possible. And I think that's really what drives so many of us, is just knowing what's out there, and knowing that you can almost kind of do whatever you set your mind to. And there's a lot of careers where that really isn't the case. You're at the mercy of, working up the corporate ladder, or maybe your boss doesn't like you. And that's one of the things that I don't want to say dentistry is immune to, but it really is. You can make it how you want it to be. And that's from day one has been really what I've figured out. And that's really what drives me, is it's the ultimate career for, paving your own path. And I feel like I can't say that enough.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, one thing that I've noticed about it is that there is this, you kind of mentioned about what like the typical expectation someone has for dentistry out of school. There's the narrative, like there's the thing that's widely believed. There's the thing that, professors at dental schools will kind of communicate to you about, what is realistic for you out of school the next 3 to 5 years, and like further out in your career. And there's just this sort of like general zeitgeist of like what dentistry looks like in the modern day. And then the more time you really spend researching it, the more time you spend finding, unicorns out there and studying them and trying to reverse engineer them, the closer you get to the reality of, what excellence in dentistry can look like and what real success in dentistry can look like, and like what that sort of, upper percentile can be. And the truth of the matter, and this is to kind of allude back to what I was talking about to begin with failure and like the process of excellence. The truth of the matter is it doesn't matter like what you're coming into it with. It doesn't matter what kind of person you are, D1. It just matters that you're being intentional and you're being passionate and you're following this as far as you can to find new answers to, how do I maximize my success with my career path? And so, it's about putting in that work, and it's a choice. And that's something we've talked about many times, like the decision to really research this and make it your own and do things that your peers are not doing in order to find something more extraordinary than they should happen to find. That is a very predictable and repeatable process. And it gets spelled out on this show all the time, how to go about that. And so I just really, I think people are fortunate for finding resources like this, not just share practices, but others. But I really, really encourage people to double down on it. Even if people around you are not spending a lot of time, learning about this kind of stuff and engaging with it, continue to engage and continue to follow it. Because if you don't have a lot of people around you that are doing this, that you're onto something. And you're onto something really special. And it's really amazing what can come out of that. So I feel that my experience has been a great example of that. And the things that I've found, or rather have found me throughout this experience, have been so far outside of the expectations that I had when I went into dental school. And so, and all that was just a process of being passionate and just following the rabbit hole and going as deep as I could and like finding new answers. And if you continue to be passionate, you continue to be inquisitive, there's just no telling what you'll find. And before you know it, you're in a place and it's hard to even explain how you got there.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. It's been a crazy journey, and I feel like you summed it up perfectly. I couldn't explain it better myself.
Thank you. I've got a lot of experience to inform that. I think about it all the time. So I think you'll be experiencing that for yourself. And I'm sure you already have to an extent. I mean, like a year ago, you were listening to this podcast on 2.5 times speed, as Olivia likes to talk about. And, and you were like furiously scribing every detail of every episode. And now look at you, like you're writing the episodes. You are the episodes. And there's someone else out there describing you. So that came from just putting yourself out there and being resourceful and, approaching people at share practices and then hanging out with us at Voices of Dentistry. And, now here we are. Right. So that was just a process of putting yourself out there and allowing yourself to be different from most of the people that were around you. And you're not doing that for the sake of being different. You're just doing it because you just sort of understand how you find extraordinary things out of life. And that's a process and it's a choice. And you made that. So it happens for everyone that goes down that road.
Exactly, man. Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Well, yeah, this has been a great episode. At least I think it has. I mean, I feel like there's some good variability in questions there. We had some serious, some not as serious. And personally, I enjoy that because, I
feel like you're reviewing your own job as a reporter.
I mean, like I thought it was great. I mean, I don't know what you thought, but I had a good time.
These aren't user submitted questions. Like, I don't think you really there's a little bit of inherent bias in your review of the questions. I'm kidding. No, there were several of them that I think were actually really wonderful questions and opened up the floor for a lot of great conversation. And I'm not just saying that to be nice. So I appreciate you throwing that together in very short order. And again, thanks to the people that make the show happen, that being John and Gary. So, but yeah, no, this is fun. And one thing I do want to clarify about my role in TPO moving forward, like the torch has been passed, like it's all yours, man. But I'm always happy to come on here to be a voice and have something to offer and give updates on my journey and stuff. And I still love doing it. I really enjoy it. It's just kind of at this point, I feel like it's more aligned for someone in your position. And so I'm excited to see where you take the show, and I'm going to be a very avid listener, and it'll be nice to kind of be on the other side of the equation again. So I'm really excited for that.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And like I've said before, I appreciate everything you've done with just building the show, building what it's all about. And yeah, I'm sure we'll definitely have you on again here soon. I don't know if this will be your last episode for a while, but you're always welcome back on the show. Always value your opinion and what you have to say.
For sure, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tyler, like I said before, and we will see you guys next week on the Pursuit of Ownership.